Picture this. It's 1980. A 14-year-old boy is sitting in a dark room in Albany, New York, watching a grainy, closed-circuit television screen. On that screen, his hero, the greatest athlete in the world, is being beaten. Badly. Helplessly. In ways the boy has never seen before and prays he'll never see again. The boy doesn't cry. He doesn't speak. He just watches. And when it's over, the car ride home is completely silent. Nobody says a single word. Not for an hour. Not one word. That boy was Mike Tyson. The man being destroyed on that screen was Muhammad Ali. And the man doing the destroying was Larry Holmes. What happened the very next morning, and what unfolded over the next 7 years, is one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of sports. A promise made by a 14-year-old kid. A whisper in a boxing arena 8 years later. And a bond between two legends that goes far deeper than most people ever realized. If you've never heard the full story of what Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson meant to each other, you are in the right place. Stay with me, because this one hits different. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel is about the stories behind the stories, the moments the cameras didn't catch, the conversations that changed careers, the human side of icons we think we know. And today, we're going deep on arguably the most meaningful relationship in heavyweight boxing history, not Ali and Frazier, not Tyson and Holyfield, Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. A story of a hero and a kid who grew up to become a legend himself. A story about what it actually means to respect someone, and a story about what one whispered sentence, 4 words, can do to a man before the biggest moment of his career. This is going to be a long one, and it is worth every second. Mike Tyson didn't grow up with much. Brownsville, Brooklyn, one of the roughest neighborhoods in America. By the time he was 13 years old, he'd already been arrested 38 times. He was angry, lost, and headed nowhere good. Then came Cus D'Amato, the legendary trainer who'd already built one world champion, Floyd Patterson, saw something in the skinny, scowling kid standing in front of him that nobody else could see. He didn't just take Mike in as a fighter, he took him in as a son, and in that house in Catskill, New York, Mike Tyson discovered Muhammad Ali Cus had reels. Actual film reels of the greatest fighters in history, Jack Dempsey, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis. Mike watched them all, but it was Ali who stopped him cold. Ali was everything Mike was not. Mike was compact, ferocious, barely contained fury. Ali was tall, graceful, almost contemptuous, like a man who knew he was going to win before the first bell even rang. He moved like water. He talked like thunder. He was the most famous man on earth, and to a 14-year-old kid who'd never had much to be proud of, Muhammad Ali was proof that a black man from the streets could become something so great the whole world had to stop and pay attention. Mike Tyson didn't just admire Muhammad Ali, he worshipped him. So on October 2nd, 1980, when Cus D'Amato loaded Mike and a few others into a car and drove to Albany to watch Ali's comeback fight against Larry Holmes on closed circuit, Mike had no idea that what he was about to witness would shape the next decade of his life. Holmes was the reigning heavyweight champion. Ali was 38 years old, well past his prime, and, as would later come out, already showing the early signs of the neurological damage that would eventually be diagnosed as Parkinson's syndrome. Doctors at the Mayo Clinic had quietly flagged concerns before the fight. Nobody stopped it. What happened inside Caesar's Palace that night was hard to watch. Holmes didn't just beat Ali, he dominated him. Round after round, Ali couldn't land his combinations. He couldn't float. He couldn't sting. The man who had once made Joe Frazier's corner throw in the towel in Manila. The man who had knocked out George Foreman in Zaire at 30-to-1 odds. That man was standing against the ropes, covering up, taking punishment he had no business taking. In the dressing room after the fight, even Holmes was seen in tears. He'd grown up idolizing Ali, too. Beating him felt like a sin. The drive home from Albany that night was, in Mike Tyson's own words, completely silent. Nobody said a word for the whole hour. Everyone in that car was carrying something that didn't have a name yet. But Mike Tyson already knew what he was going to do about it. The very next morning, Cus D'Amato picked up the phone and called Muhammad Ali. Now think about that for a second. Cus D'Amato, a man who didn't make unnecessary calls, a man who was deliberate about everything, called Ali the morning after the most painful loss of the champion's career. Not to console him, not for business. He called because he had a young kid sitting across the room who needed to say something. When Ali got on the phone, Mike Tyson told him, and remember, this is a 14-year-old boy, a kid who barely had anything. To his name saying this, he told Muhammad Ali, "When I grow up, I'll fight Holmes, and I'll get him back for you." 4 words. I'll get him back. A promise. From a child to a legend, made in grief, and meant absolutely sincerely. Ali couldn't have known that morning whether this kid would ever be anything, whether he'd stay out of trouble long enough to even put on a pair of gloves professionally, whether he'd survive Brownsville, whether he'd make it at all. But 7 years later, on January 22, 1988, at the Convention Hall in Atlantic City, Mike Tyson, now 21 years old, undefeated, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, stepped into the ring against Larry Holmes, and Muhammad Ali was right there, sitting ringside. Just before the opening bell, Ali entered the ring. He leaned in close to Mike Tyson, the man who was now arguably the most feared fighter on the planet, and he whispered in his ear, 4 words, "Get him for me." What followed was one of the most dominant performances in Tyson's entire career. He pressured Holmes relentlessly. In round 4, he backed Holmes into the ropes and landed a devastating overhand right that sent the former champion to the canvas for the 3rd time in the round. With 7 seconds left in the round, the referee stopped the fight. Mike Tyson had kept his promise. 7 years after a 14-year-old boy sat in silence on the drive home from Albany, the world heavyweight champion had avenged his hero. He looked into the crowd afterward and found Ali's face. And in that moment, nothing else in the arena mattered. Before we keep going, if this story is hitting you the way it hit me when I first went deep on it, do me one favor and drop a comment below telling me which part of this hit hardest for you so far. The promise, the whisper before the fight. I genuinely want to know what you're feeling right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the kind of content we do here. Real stories, full depth, no fluff. Hit subscribe so you never miss one. Now, let's talk about the man Ali actually was, because most people never saw this part. By the late 1980s, something had changed about Muhammad Ali in public. The man who had once talked faster than most people could think, who'd predicted rounds, written poems about his opponents, turned press conferences into performances, was quieter, slower, more careful with his words. Parkinson's syndrome had begun to take its toll. But here's what people misunderstood. They looked at Ali's trembling hands and slowing speech and assumed something had been lost, that the greatness had dimmed. Mike Tyson saw it differently. In a deeply emotional podcast interview years later, Tyson said something that stopped everyone listening in their tracks. He said, "I always like to think I'm a bad mother, but that's where Ali overshadows me, because I can't understand a man who's willing to really die for his beliefs." Think about what he meant. Tyson was the most physically intimidating man alive. Nobody on earth wanted to stand in front of him. But Ali had faced something Tyson never had to. The full weight of a government, a draft board, the boxing establishment, and an entire section of the American public telling him he was a traitor. And he stood there, without flinching, without running. He risked his title, his freedom, and his prime years rather than compromise what he believed. Tyson understood something most critics never did. Physical courage, the kind that wins boxing matches, is only one type of bravery. And Ali had the other kind, the harder kind. When they appeared together on the Arsenio Hall show in 1989, one of the rare times both men were on the same stage, the chemistry between them was extraordinary. When Arsenio asked Ali who would win if the two of them had ever fought, Ali pointed directly at Tyson without hesitation and then pretended to be knocked out cold. The crowd roared, and Tyson's response? He looked at Ali and said, in front of everyone, "In this situation, every head must bow, every tongue must profess. This is the greatest of all time." That's not performance. You don't say that in front of a live television audience unless you mean it bone deep. Over the years, Tyson would visit Ali multiple times, right up until Ali's death in June 2016. These weren't publicity visits. Most of them were private. No cameras, no press, no statements afterward, just two men sitting together, one asking questions, one answering them in a voice that had gotten quieter with the years but never once lost its clarity. What did Ali give Mike Tyson? Not technique, not strategy, not ring craft, perspective. Tyson has talked openly about the chaos of his own life, the rise, the fall, the prison sentence, the losses that felt like the end of the world. And when you listen to how he talks about those years now, there's a maturity there that wasn't always present, a sense that greatness is not a destination you arrive at. It's something you carry with you, or you lose it. Ali lived that. Ali lost everything at the height of his powers, his title, his income, his freedom to travel, and came back to win the heavyweight championship of the world not once, not twice, but 3 times. He came back from things that would have ended most. People. And then, when Parkinson's took the speed from his hands and the thunder from his voice, he still showed up. He still carried himself with dignity. He still made people feel something when he walked into a room. When Ali died in 2016, Mike Tyson was one of his pallbearers. He carried the casket of the man who had first picked up the phone to give a grieving 14-year-old kid something to fight for. Think about the arc of that. A phone call in 1980, a promise from a child, a whisper before a fight, decades of private conversations, and then, at the very end, Tyson carrying Ali one last time. That's not just a sports story. That's something much larger than sports. Okay, I need you to do something right now. Go to the comments and answer this question. Which man's story hits harder for you? Ali's courage to stand for what he believed in, or Tyson's raw loyalty to his hero over 36 years? There's no wrong answer. I want to know what you think. And if you're watching this on a device right now, show it to someone who loves boxing, or who needs a story about what real loyalty looks like. Let's finish this. People talk about Muhammad Ali as an icon, as a symbol, as a cultural monument, and he was all of those things. But the Ali that Mike Tyson knew, the Ali who picked up the phone the morning after his worst defeat to talk to a kid he'd never met, the Ali who showed up at ringside 8 years later to whisper 4 words, the Ali who let Tyson visit him during the long years of Parkinson's, that Ali was something simpler and rarer than an icon. He was present. He was human. He was generous with himself in a way that celebrities almost never are, and Tyson, who came from nothing, who by all rights should have been swallowed by the streets, became a different kind of man because of that generosity. Not a perfect man. Tyson himself would never claim that. His story has darkness in it, real, serious darkness. But there's a through line in his life, from that silent car ride in 1980 to carrying that casket in 2016, that reveals something about who he fundamentally was underneath all the noise. He was a boy who found a hero, who made a promise, and who kept it. And that's the part of Mike Tyson most people never talk about. Boxing is full of champions. The record books are full of names. But the relationship between Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, built on a long-distance phone call, a quiet promise, and decades of private trust. That's the kind of thing that outlasts records. It outlasts championship belts. It outlasts time. It's the reminder that what makes someone legendary isn't just what they do in the ring. It's what they do when the cameras are off, when there's nothing to gain, when the only reason to show up is because someone needs you to. Muhammad Ali showed up for Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was 14 years old and nobody, and Mike Tyson spent the rest of his life making sure that meant something. That's the story. Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. Not a rivalry, not a business relationship, a real bond, built in the early 1980s in the silence of a car ride home and sealed at a funeral more than 3 decades later. Now, here's what I want from you before you go anywhere. First, drop a comment. Tell me, what's the most powerful moment in this story for you? The promise? The whisper before the Holmes fight? The pallbearer moment? I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to hear from you. Second, if this story moved you even a little bit, share this video with one person today. Not because I need the views, because someone in your life needs to hear a story about real loyalty and real respect. This is that story. Third, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell, because we do this kind of deep dive content every single week. Real stories, full depth, the version of history that the highlight reels don't show you. Muhammad Ali once said that service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. He paid his rent. In full. With generosity to a 14-year-old kid from Brownsville who had a promise to keep. I'll see you in the next one.